Hey everybody, welcome back to Hell Brent for Leather. Brent here with a very special guest I've been trying to have on for a little while since I got this started. Sort of, I won't say my mentor in metal, but certainly the person who's probably helped me have the most success in seeing shows and being part of shows more so than anyone else I've ever met in the scene, Mr. Nathan Block. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. This is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're kind of the reason I'm Hellbrent for Leather. You didn't come up with the name, but you certainly were the catalyst for me having that outlet on the route.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that day very well.
So, well, I've talked about you some on the pod before in terms of your involvement in the scene and now your involvement with Progpower and everything else. But for anything that I may have missed, who the fuck are you?
Well, I don't know. I've always been a fan first, and I've always treasured the music more so than any of the other things that I've gotten involved with because of it. And I don't know, maybe that made me a good promoter, maybe that made me a bad promoter, depending on who you talk to. But I have always enjoyed the music. I've always enjoyed the energy of a live show. I've always enjoyed the orchestration of live events, I guess because my background is mainly being a business owner. I've enjoyed sort of being the ringmaster, as it were, in getting shows set up. I've always enjoyed the planning and the execution and the logistics and the excitement of people as they come through the door and the roar of the crowd when the show is underway. You sort of get that in your blood and you never really get rid of it. There's just something about it that is really intoxicating to be around. And I think that, not to get all political about this is not the point at all, but I think that's one of the things that has really been affected by the pandemic is our ability to enjoy things as a crowd. And is the public ever going to be comfortable being around the public again, I think is going to be the big question that is going to be interesting to see answered over the next 2, 3, 4 years, however long it takes us to get back to quote unquote normal. And if we lose the live experience for music, whether it be metal, whether it be rock, whether it be anything, I think everybody loses. I think that would be a catastrophic loss to society and culture if we lose the ability to enjoy a live show. But that's kind of my background. I sort of fell into live music promotion. I didn't plan to get into it. I ended up meeting somebody locally by the name of Don Decker, who was...
All hail Flabby Blasto.
Indeed. He was the man in Minnesota. And anybody who has ever seen a metal show in Minnesota in one way or another owes it to Don. And I met him in 2002. And then less than 6 months later, we promoted a show together, the very first show that I would ever promote, Blind Guardian and Symphony X. And then from there, it just ended up taking on a life of its own. And it was Don Decker that gave me my nickname. I don't know if you've mentioned that on the show, but Swordlord came about because of the attire that I used to wear to shows back in that time period. And I showed up on the night of our show, and I was in leather, black leather, all the way. I had my black leather pants, my jacket, and full black leather gauntlets that I got at the Renaissance Festival. And he took one look at me and he said, "Wait a minute, you're coming to a power metal show and you're decked out in leather and you've got great big gauntlets." And I said, "Yeah." And he looked at me and he says, "You're the Swordlord. That's your new nickname." And it totally stuck. And I've been Swordlord ever since.
I love that story. And you've told me that story many times, and I love it.
You know, we're coming up. I didn't even realize it now, but we're sort of coming up on the 20-year anniversary of me being that that entity that he sort of bequeathed upon me all those years ago. So it's
Does that
kind
mean
of funny.
does that mean we get a 20th anniversary Swordlord shindig?
Yeah, I might have to come out of retirement and do that. That would be kind of fun.
It
But
just sucks
I
Warlo's dead.
ran
We can't bring
shows
Sanctuary.
locally from 2002 until about 2016. And then I had started promoting with Progpower with Glenn Harveston, the founder of that festival. I started doing that in 2013, and I've kept my hand in that ever since, even though I'm not really a part of the local scene anymore. Not that there is a local scene right now, there isn't anywhere. But at any rate, that's kind of my history. 15 years of promotion here in Minnesota, and then about 8 years of promotion out in Atlanta, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's a great business. It's a tough business. It's a stressful business, and you meet a lot of assholes, but it is a very fun and rewarding business to be in.
Sure. Back to a couple of things that you said, just to expound upon further, the whole, not really being able to enjoy live entertainment and stuff like that anymore. There's a podcaster that I listen to, and I couldn't agree more with his sentiment, which you then inadvertently echoed. There's more to life than simply breathing. Life is lived experiences. It's doing things. It's great food, trips, great music, all these other things. There's a difference between being alive and being alive. And
that's well said.
We don't really have that right now. And
no, we don't.
Really, really sucks. But to another point that you made, or another thing that you said rather, back to Don being nuttier than squirrel shit. I miss that guy. He was incredible. He was a force to be reckoned with, and a train wreck of a human being in many respects. But I don't think anyone who knew him would change a single thing about him, because that was what made him him.
Oh yeah, and just the contribution that he made that will never be recognized to local scene promotion, and he was just the king of it. Well, and he knew so many things about it, and that contribution nobody's going to put a statue up to the guy, nobody's going to write a book about the guy, but what he did blazed the trail for so many that have followed, that it is just impossible to underestimate his mark on metal history, especially in this state.
Well, you got to. I'm sure you remember this, but other people should have him to thank for this if they're at all fans of the band, which they would have gotten over here eventually. But he was the catalyst for it. He was responsible for the first Cradle of Filth US show.
Mm-hmm.
They had never played a show in the United States, and he brought them out and had a show, and they've kind of been a staple, or rather, the U.S. has been a staple of their tours ever since. Whenever Danny's gone out on the road.
Oh yeah, he brought so many bands to Minnesota that was their first appearance, and
not to mention his involvement
Symphony
with
X and Blind Guardian. That was their first appearance in Minnesota as a result of his leadership on that. Even though I quote unquote produced the show, I still wouldn't have been able to get it without his contacts. So,
and not to
he's true trailblazer.
Not to mention his Nightfall Records that he had. That was a catalyst
Nightfall
for stuff.
Records.
And then his involvement in Milwaukee Metal Fest.
Yep.
Jack Koshik gets a lot of the blame for the train wrecks that those shows were, and rightfully so. But, Don was a big catalyst for bringing in a lot of those bands, and I'm glad that the blame of a lot of the fiascos that were anything that Jack Koshik presented didn't fall on Don, because he was actually, dare I say this, because no one will ever believe it, one of the more professional ones of the bunch.
Yeah.
So
no, Don was super professional, regardless of his rather abrasive personality, because he taught me the first rule of promotion, which is number one, the talent never gets screwed. Number two, see rule number one.
Yep.
And that was how he promoted. And as a result, no matter how many people he may have rubbed the wrong way in the scene, he still had an incredible reputation with agents and bands and other promoters because of the way he did business. He was as honest as the day is long.
And that was always my experience with him too.
Yeah.
One thing that you said there, I lost my train of thought. You talking about, rule number 1, never screw a band. Rule number 2, see rule number 1. I'm sure there's a couple of bands out there that may try to say that you screwed them over the years, because they probably would have said that anybody screwed them, because that's just the nature of the business. You're always going to have a band that will see something completely different than how it actually was and think you screwed them. But 99.9999999% of the bands were very happy with how you treated them. And, they got an experience in Minnesota that they didn't really get anywhere else. You'd take them out to a nice restaurant. You'd make sure that their rider, they had anything within reason that they needed. You lost money on a lot of shows in order to make sure that the bands were treated well. So you really took that rule of Deckers to heart and always did
Absolutely.
the right thing in that regard.
Well, and again, but it also helps too that I was a fan of many of the bands that I brought in. And if I wasn't a fan before, I typically became one after, because there's just something about live music that you can't duplicate. And once you see the passion and the energy of a band, it's impossible not to want to check them out and find out what they're all about and listen to their music and so on and so forth. But yeah, I tried to give bands a good experience, and I think by and large I'm remembered for that, at least on some level. The story that I always love to tell is before Amaranth broke out, and before Elise Ride became a household name, she went on tour with Camelot, and she sang on the Black Halo tour, and I remember very distinctly it was her and Simone.
I was at that dinner.
What?
I said I was at that dinner. I remember that dinner well at Tutoria.
Yeah, you sure were. You definitely were. And I remember that they said, because I had said, what do you guys want to eat? And Elise is like, we want a steak. We want an American steak. I'm like, okay. So we went to this place where I knew, among other things, they could get a steak. And that was, I don't know, that must have been like 05, 06.
No, it was after that, because I moved up here in 06. So it would have had to have been 07, 08.
Okay. Well, at any rate, after that, I would constantly run into her at whatever, whether it was Amaranth playing or this, that, and the other thing. And she would always say, I remember that steak dinner we all had. She always said that. I've had that conversation with her a dozen times if I had it once. So I think that a little bit of above and beyond the normal expectations for promotion goes a long way. And bands remember it more often than not.
Well, you can't tell me that Mape didn't have the greatest day of his life when Candlemass played here, and before we went to your theater to see.
I was just going to say that.
So
that was literally going to be the next story I brought up, was that epic old country buffet meal that the company lost money on, and there's probably still their security camera footage of all of them going, don't ever serve these guys again. So we had taken Candlemass out, and they wanted to go to an American buffet. They're like, we could keep hearing about American buffets and how amazing they are. And like the only thing that was even remotely close and open in the area that we were in was an old country buffet restaurant, which I don't even think they're around anymore. I think they pretty much are Golden Corral now, but it was that same style of restaurant. So I'm like, okay, let's go there. So we got into a big van and we drove to Old Country Buffet, and those guys ate more food than I have ever seen human beings consume. And so they were just getting chicken and beef and pizza and potatoes, just all this stuff. They just cleaned that buffet out. So then the plan was to go to the movie theater that I happened to own, and we were going to watch Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. They wanted to see that. So after this epic lunch, we go to the movie theater, and I'm thinking they're going to be too full for snacks. And I walked in, and they were all lined up at the concession counter, and they all got great big things of popcorn, great big things of soda, candy. A couple of them got like hot dogs and stuff. And I'm just like, those guys must have eaten more that day than they did that entire tour. It was absolutely the craziest thing I've ever seen, and so much fun. I think that's in my top 3 like best days ever, was spending the day with Candlemass.
In terms of all of the fun times that we ever had with bands, I would say that day with them and taking Sanctuary to the arcade that you used to have.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun too.
And taking Pagan's Mind to Mall of America.
I didn't get to do that. I wasn't there for that. So back to the Candlemass story. You know, I've said for years, if I'm lying, I'm flying, and my feet ain't left the ground. Mape ate 8 plates. I watched him because I was sitting beside him, and I saw him at Maryland Death Fest a few years later, or several years later, whenever it was, because Maryland Death Fest that I would have seen them at would have been 2013 or 2014. I don't remember if it was the year that the plaza closed or if it was the year after, but I see him there, and he immediately sees me, and I'm like, Mape. He goes, American Buffet!
Nice.
And then we talked about how much Indiana Jones 4 sucked, but
oh, that's awesome.
I love that
American
day so
Buffet.
much.
That's great.
But yeah, and another thing that you were talking about, you know, being a promoter that went over the top for things, you know, there were a bunch of people, yourself included. I mean, it's not a derogatory thing. It shows your love for everything. Who said, Nathan's a bit of a fanboy. That's not an insult, because there would be times where we're sitting there and we're standing between like the barrier and the stage or something or another, watching a band that you've brought in, and I'm looking at you and I'm like, yeah, so how'd you do? And you'd look at me, oh, I lost $500. I'm like, that sucks. You know, I'm sorry. And you goes, oh no, don't worry about it. I'm like, why? And you said, I'd have spent $1,000 to go to Chicago to see them, so at least I got some of my investment back.
Yeah, that you got a good memory. I used to say that all the time.
Yeah. So who's been, yeah, and you don't have to name names if you don't want to. But let's say excluding any Progpower bands that you've ever worked with, because I don't want you to get you in any hot water with them, or any potential bands that you would ever bring to Progpower. Who's the best band you ever worked with locally? And you can mention a Progpower band for that too, because I don't think anybody would be upset that you said they were the best band to work with. Who's the best band you ever worked with? And without mentioning Watain and the infamous smearing shit all over the dressing room incident, fuck those guys. He might not say it. I will. Fuck Watain. And Steve Ledeen will happily say it. Who's the best, your favorite band that you've ever worked with in regards to professionalism, and who's your least favorite?
Oh man, wow.
And let's quantify it further.
I mean,
take
you're
money out of the
pretty good
equation.
with,
take money out of the equation. Like, even if it's a show you lost money on, don't hold that against them.
Well, yeah. No, that's completely beside the point.
Okay.
Yeah, the Watain story. Yeah, Watain's got to be the worst, because not only was the dressing room incident just completely inexcusable, but also the reason that happened was because they had asked for cocaine and I refused to provide it. that actually the tour manager, who will be nameless, actually came up and said, they could really use some cocaine. Do you know anybody who could hook them up? And I said, I'm not going to be party to that. So that was almost in direct retaliation to that, and then getting up and playing a 40-minute set when they were the headliners of the night. Just that whole evening was a complete disaster on many different levels. And yeah, that is one show that I really wish I would have said no to. But of course, hindsight is always 2020. And boy, best band, that is so hard because I had so many great experiences with bands over the years. I think if there was a best band award for Swordlord Productions, I think it would probably have to go to Sonata Arctica, because every single time they came to town, I think I ended up promoting them 4 different times. And every single time they came to town, they were super easy to work with, super gracious, super kind to everybody, not just to me, but to the fans. They were always good to work with the crew, with the club. All of the club techs always loved them. They were just great people, both on stage and off. So I think Sabaton Sonata Arctica would have to be first place, and then Sabaton would be a very, very, very close second. My favorite Sabaton story is they toured right before Carolus Rex was about to come out. And I remember that I was sitting on the bus after the show with Joachim, and he looked at me and he says, "Do you want to hear the new album?" And I thought that maybe he'd play a little bit of one song or whatever. I said, "Yeah, of course I'd love to hear it." And literally for the next 45 minutes, he played the entire album for me. And it was just us on the bus, and we went through every track, and he'd stop at the end of, and he'd like, what did you think? And Carolus Rex is still one of my favorite albums that they did, next to Art of War, which I think is their best, but that's just me. But I was just in awe of the whole album, so I just gush after every track, like, this is fantastic stuff, and you're pushing your own vocal abilities beyond what we've ever heard, and it was just a really cool moment that he cared that much about my opinion. I mean, who am I in the grand scheme of things? I'm just a local promoter, but he wanted me to hear the album, the entire album, and then get my feedback on every track. And that will forever be one of the most amazing experiences I ever had while promoting.
Awesome. So, what's kind of coming up on the horizon for you? I know you've got Progpower. It got postponed until, what is it, June of the next year?
Yeah.
Who's
literally the first like 4 days of June is when it's going to go down. First, second, third, and fourth.
Who do you have on your night?
My night actually has not changed. Luckily, everybody that I was talking to is going to be coming back. So we've got Dream Evil, we've got Power Quest, we've got Artificial Language, and we've got Mind Maze out of California. Now, there is the possibility that I will be adding a fifth band to the bill. And I'm sort of reluctant to talk about an actual name right now because it's not confirmed, and I don't want to get everybody all psyched if it doesn't happen. It would be a first-time U.S. appearance. They've never played the United States before. If you're a power metal nerd like I am, there's no way you don't know who they are. And yeah, it would. I've been working on it for a while now, and unfortunately, with the situation in Europe the way it is, talks have kind of stalled on it right now. But I'm hoping that if the country is open by the time January rolls around, hopefully there will be enough time to get it done.
Sure.
And that is my hope. So it might be a 5-band. It might be a 5-band night, and Glenn thinks I'm crazy, and I'm sure everybody else will think I'm crazy, but it needs to be done. So
if this band comes on, would they be your headliner?
I don't think that's fair to Dream Evil. I think that basically they would just go right underneath Dream Evil, but it's sort of, I don't know, it's sort of a toss-up as to who is the headliner and the co-headliner, because all the bands on this bill are just so good. But Dream Evil needs to headline because they're so far overdue. I mean, Dream Evil should have played Progpower so many times, and things always happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is their first time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and to the best of my knowledge, they have played exactly one U.S. show, and it was a closed show. So Dream Evil, this will, for all intents and purposes, will be their first U.S. appearance that people can actually go to. From what I've been told, and I mean, don't quote me because I could be wrong, because I got all this third hand, but from what I've been told, they played a Century Media party, and that was their only U.S. appearance. And so it was invitation only. It was not a public show. You couldn't buy tickets, but they were there and they played. That is as much as I know about their U.S. performances. They've never played a festival to the absolute best of my knowledge. Now, if I'm wrong, of course, I'll retract the statement. But as far as I know, this will be Dream Evil's first accessible U.S. show in the how many years they've been around? 25 years.
Yeah,
so
that probably been around that long, because it would have been mid to late 90s when they got their start for sure. Because I was listening to them when I got into metal, and I got into metal in 99, 2000.
Trying to remember when that first album came out, but it's escaping me for the moment. But this will be a historic show, no matter how you slice it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Dream Evil. That they're definitely a bucket list band for me. They have been for years, and it's only fitting that they're on my show. It's my music. This is definitely a band that I should have brought here.
Absolutely. And unfortunately for me, I don't think I'm going to be able to make Progpower next year. And this will be my first time missing it since I started going. But as I kind of talked about on a previous episode, I don't know if I fit in so much anymore with certain crowds of people there. But, more importantly, I'm going down to Texas in April for a festival, Hell's Heroes 4, I think it is. And I'm going down there for Candlemass, and who else is playing that I really cared about? Candlemass, Dark Angel, Satan, and there was one more. There was one more, but I can't remember who it was. That was the top 3 I wanted to see, because I fucking love Candlemass. I love Dark Angel, and I've never seen Satan live, and that really excites me because they're one of the better of the NWO BHM bands. And so I'm really looking forward to that, and I don't know when the last time it may have been that they played the States.
Well, yeah, it's been at least 2,000 years, so I mean... So, I hear he and the Archangel Gabriel aren't speaking much, but maybe he won't be at the festival and they'll put on a good show. So I actually haven't heard of the festival. I should check it out. That sounds like quite a lineup just right there.
Yeah, so. And it sold out in like 48 hours.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, because
Well, I guess I'm not going.
Greg Hasbrook was going to go. Ian, Progpower Ian was going to go.
Mr. Ian Katz.
Yeah, there were a few people that were going to go that didn't get tickets. I got tickets super quick. Will got tickets super quick. So he's flying out here, and I'm driving us both down. So
sounds like a good time. Well, yeah, I'll have to tune into your podcast when you give the big review of it.
Yeah. So let's see. Trying to think of what else I want to talk to you about because there's so much fucking history between us. We met at Progpower.
That's for sure.
We met at Progpower 4. Progpower 5. Because 4 was my first year. 5 was your first year.
So close enough.
And we met because it was you and Metal Rose, and it was me and Amanda.
Yep.
I think it was just the two of us that year.
Yeah.
And we were all walking kind of towards you guys' hotel. Just kind of walking around, seeing everybody, and just trying to get our bearings, because it was her third year, and it was my second year. And so we just were walking. It was raining. I want to say that was the year that Hurricane Ivan hit.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It was.
Because I had fuck Ivan that I'd written on my knuckles with a Sharpie, like prison tattoos. Because it was just raining cats and dogs the whole weekend. But I remember it started coming down, and Amanda had an umbrella, or maybe you had an umbrella. I don't remember, but however it happened, either you invited us under yours, it was a big fucking umbrella. You either invited us under yours, or y'all jumped under ours, or whatever, and we walked back to the hotel. Which hotel was it? Was it the Residence?
It was the Fairfield.
Oh, the Fairfield. That's right.
Yeah. The one that's not there.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't think, because it was the one behind Center Stage, correct?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
And yeah, you actually kind of had it took a bit of effort to get there. So yeah, it was quite a ways. So,
but then we all kind of met up and sat in the lobby down there, and I remember Bear walked in, and who else was?
Well, we didn't actually really start talking until the pre-show.
Okay.
Because we were sitting around the bar, and then remember that Chilean band was playing. What was the name of that band? They only played that one show, and they were amazing. Magistral.
Oh,
Magistral.
Yeah. Dude,
that was the name of the band.
I have a physical copy of their demo that I got before that show.
So do I. Yeah, I got it there too. So yeah, so then I booked it to the front of the stage because they were just kicking ass. It was just amazing. And then I think you joined me. And so then afterwards we were talking, and then we were just all shooting the shit in that vinyl club.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is when the pre-party was still in the vinyl.
Yeah.
Was he doing? He was doing. That's back when he was still doing. No, karaoke hadn't started yet, because karaoke was in that room.
Yeah, that was a couple of years later.
Karaoke was in that room the night before, and then he had the pre-party, and then the festival. That's right.
Right. Yeah, and the pre-party was very, 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 very small. And I'm trying to remember the first year that Shane had put it in the main room, because it was a big band that had headlined it for the first time. But yeah, at that point it was really small, and it was just it was smaller, mostly local type acts that got to play. But I mean, all those shows were amazing. It didn't matter what room it was in; it was still great music.
All three of the rooms at Center Stage have good sound.
Yeah, that was a well conceived multi auditorium venue. I've always liked it. I wish that there was a venue like it here in Minnesota. I have always liked that venue. It's perfect for pretty much anything that you would ever want to do there, whether it would be a stage show or live music or whatever. That is just a great setup.
Well, I know you were never
very smart design on that place.
I know you were never really ever a wrestling fan, but in the 80s and even early 90s, Center Stage was like the home base for Turner Wrestling and Jim Crockett Promotions at Center Stage. That's where they shot their TV live, or not live, but taped from. is they do TV tapings there on Saturday mornings. And so any of the old WCW or Crockett promotions that you'd watch that were from Atlanta, it was either at the Turner Studio or at Center Stage.
I did not know that, but that doesn't surprise me. That would be a super room for that.
Yeah, because
super room.
The ring would be down where the standing room only is.
Right, right.
And then they'd move the stage out, and that would be like where the announce team and all that stuff was, if I remember correctly. And then you had the auditorium portion of it, the seating and stuff, where all the fans would be. And they'd be looking down on the ring. And, I mean, Ric Flair wrestled there. I mean, it was a big deal.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I don't actually know that much about the history of that venue, like when it was built or all the different things. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me, and that's cool to hear that it's been around that long and that it's flourishing. I hope that it's going to be able to weather the pandemic. It would be a shame to lose that venue, not obviously just for Progpower, but it's just such a great venue in general.
Sure. Has Glenn said anything about that? Like, has he heard one way or the other how they're doing that you can say publicly if you've heard anything at all?
No, they've been really tight-lipped about it, and I know that they've gone through yet more management changes. So, yeah, next year is going to be a very interesting year, to say the least, for all attendees. And not to say that it's going to be bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just going to say it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, and certainly it'll be interesting to see if we can at least get one thing back to normal, and if we can have a good Progpower and the venue is as we remember, and things can run as we remember. That would sure be a nice oasis in the middle of this sea of chaos that we find ourselves in.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I hope that they weather the storm. I hope they got an SVOG grant. That would be fantastic if they did. So yeah, here's to hoping.
Yeah, I would be, even if I am never able to go back to Progpower again for any number of reasons, I would be extraordinarily bummed out to hear that Center Stage went away. It's the perfect venue for Progpower. There's a reason that Glenn's had it there year after year after year after year since he originally moved it there. And I hope that Progpower wasn't born there, but I hope it dies there.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you have on the horizon that you're looking forward to? Any shows that you're gonna venture out and try to see? Is there anything coming that you give a damn about?
I don't. At this point, I don't care. I just want to get to a show. We have had so many tours that have been postponed, and then we're going out, and oh no, we're not. So now we got to postpone again, and I just honestly, whatever's coming around, I just want to go. I just want to be at a live show again. It's going to be. I can't remember. The sad thing is I can't remember the last live show I attended, and certainly cannot wait to see another one here. So hopefully there'll be something coming around here that's worth seeing.
I think I might be with you on that. I don't know if I remember the last live concert that I've been to. I've been to several comedy shows since the beginning of the pandemic. But in terms of music, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm seeing Priest at the end of the month.
That's definitely on my radar. I mean, if anything, just because Sabaton's out with them, and how cool is that?
Absolutely. I'm stoked about that they're getting that chance to be introduced to. I mean, because don't get me wrong, but I love Steel Panther. I really do. I understand what they're about. I know that they're not taking themselves seriously. I know Satchel's history with Rob because he was Rob's guitar player in Fight. But, you're not going to... Steel Panther's not going to win over a lot of Priest fans. Because either they're going to think it's stupid, or they're going to think it's making fun of them, or they're going to be people that already like them. Whereas with Sabaton, I truly believe there's going to be people at Priest that have never heard of Sabaton, or at the very least never heard Sabaton. They're going to walk out of there going, holy shit, what the hell was that?
Yeah, because Sabaton is actually is a band that can really win over a crowd live, even if you don't know the material. And that's not necessarily a universal thing. There are just some bands that they play live and they don't have that universal accessibility for whatever reason. And that isn't always a negative. I don't say that as a negative thing. There's just some things that if you are familiar with the music, you enjoy better than if you're not. Sabaton is one of the few bands that if you just don't know who they are, you are going to have a great time at that show. The very first time I saw Sabaton, I didn't know very much about them. I knew some of their stuff, but I certainly wasn't the rabid, foaming at the mouth fan that I am now. And that first time that I saw them, I will never, ever, ever forget it. They have an energy that is just completely unmatched by almost every other band out there. They are just an entity unto themselves. They are a force of nature. And I just can't imagine anybody coming out of a Sabaton show not somewhat intrigued at who these guys are and what their music is about. It would baffle me to hear that from somebody.
There are so many great live bands, but when it comes to playing well live and also having just a commanding stage presence, that's another echelon. I mean, you've got Iron Maiden. They're the undisputed kings of the world when it comes to a killer stage show, being engaging with the audience, and being fucking great musicians. Sabaton, I won't say they're in the same league as Maiden, because I don't think that anyone's in the same league as Maiden, but they play in the same ballpark on the B squad, you know, and that's a high compliment. Because
yeah, I get what you're saying. The thing that differentiates a band like Sabaton from a band like Maiden is, with Maiden you get the whole package. You get an amazing band that has been touring for so long that they walk out on stage and they don't even have to do anything. They just walk on stage and you know that they're professionals and you know that they're amazing, and they just, you're eating out of their hand within the first two notes that they play. And of course their production is unbelievable because they're Iron Maiden. Sabaton has the ability to be amazing without the backing of huge production. And that is something that is worthy to note, that they don't have to have a $25,000 stage show to have an absolutely spellbinding live performance. And that's why Sabaton will always have my respect, because they can do it through sheer force of will. And they will always amaze me that they are able to accomplish that, even despite all of the lineup changes that they've had and all of the personnel changes that they've had over the years, that their shows don't miss a single beat or note is absolutely 100% worthy of recognition.
The producers here would like to note that Nathan's opinions do not necessarily match those of Brent for Leather because, and I quote, "If anyone from the Sabaton camp is listening to this, Nathan's views do not reflect the views that I have, where I wouldn't be upset if Joachim were to come out in a tank one day. I'm just saying, have the big stage show, bring a tank. Bring a tank!"
Well, I'm not saying that I wouldn't like to see that.
No, I know what you're saying.
I'm just saying that they don't need it. I mean, yeah, if he drives a tank off the stage and crushes half the crowd like an episode of Metalocalypse, I mean, yeah, of course, that would be the greatest thing ever. But it doesn't need to happen. All I just need to do is see him get all excited and start whipping the crowd into a frenzy and throw his aerials at somebody, and that's it. That's all I need.
You're absolutely right that they can come out on stage in urban camo and their instruments and act like they're playing in front of 1 million people with the biggest stage show ever and win over the crowd to that effect.
Yeah, Hakeem is absolutely hands down one of the best frontmen of all time. He just is. And whether or not, I don't know what criteria you personally judge that, and I'm sure that people will have differing opinions on how that is measured, but I would put him in the running for top 10 of all time. He's amazing. There isn't anything that guy can't do. He is a truly amazing performer.
10 might be a tall order, but I agree with you. He is one of the better ones ever. He has a commanding stage presence, and it took a little while for me to warm up to his vocal style, just because he's not really a singer, and he was the first person to admit that. He was their keyboardist, and their singer left, and he was just like, well, I guess I'm going to get on with it and do it my damn self, and he did it while they were trying to find another singer, and then they just kind of were like, fuck it, you keep doing it. And he's gotten better over the years. I don't dislike it. It took me a couple of records to appreciate it. And now I like it. Like, now it fits. I get it.
Well, yeah, because they basically took his voice and they basically wrote all the music sort of around it. And it works. It is he doesn't have the range of, a Fabio Leone or a Michael Kiske or anything like that, but he does what he does well. And it's a distinctive voice. He's got a distinct sound. He's got a ton of power behind it. He's got a ton of emotion behind it. And they have written the music appropriately. If they were writing everything about an octave and a half higher, it would be doing the entire style a disservice.
Yes.
But they were like, okay, this is the range you can sing in. This is the intensity that you can get, so we're going to have to match that. And they've delivered album after album after album that has showcased him, as opposed to being limited by the fact that he can't sing like James LaBrie or whatever. I think that they have done a remarkable job of tailoring all of that. And he's grown into it. He's definitely expanded. Carolus Rex, you can feel him reaching farther with his own abilities. And I think that even more recently, he's done that. He's taken it even a step further. So on the Last Stand. So there is plenty more with that guy that is yet to come. And it doesn't matter that he might not be necessarily the greatest vocalist of all time. He's still got a ton of check marks in that pro column. Absolutely. That you can't not acknowledge the amazing contribution he has made.
And he's also one of the nicest vocalists I've ever met. Like, you have a lot of singers that have quote unquote LSS, lead singer syndrome. He's not one of those guys at all. I talked to him for probably 30 minutes one night in the Vinyl at Progpower, and we were talking about how he was, he's not now because they've found more success since then, so he can live off of Sabaton, but he was talking about how he was an electrician back home in Sweden and all this stuff, and just a super nice guy. It was one of my most cherished band conversations I've ever had at Progpower, up there with meeting and talking to Isan in the lobby for 20 minutes. And asking him about Norwegian church burnings.
They all are great people, and that definitely helps the experience when the people that you idolize on stage turn out to be cool human beings off stage.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't always happen, and especially as a promoter, you have to be real careful about that. And I can't believe I'm about to tell this story, but you know what? I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So there was this one time where there was an opportunity, be it however small and be it however huge the amount of money that I would have had to put up, where there was an opportunity to bring Manowar into Minnesota and they could have played a festival. And so I was negotiating with their their sort of manager, sort of agent. He was sort of a go-between for their real people. But so we were sort of talking about it, and I had the offer, and I had done all the math, and so I had sent it all over to him, and he knew me. We had done a few shows together, so he knew who I was, and we had actually met in person a couple times. And so we're on the phone talking about this, and he's like, Nathan, you don't want Man of War to play your festival. He said, number one, Joey's going to take a look at the crowd and decide he wants $10,000 more before he goes on stage. They're going to decide they want 10 times as many catering. They're going to decide that they need all this extra equipment that they're not going to want to use. He's like, you will go home after that concert and you will burn all your albums. And then you'll go to your friend's house and you'll burn all of their albums.
I remember that story actually because you and Steve were going to bring them into Station 4, if I remember correctly, and y'all were talking about it was going to have to be like $100 a ticket
at one point in time until we saw the price tag.
Yeah, you said that you'd have to charge $100 a ticket, sell it out, and you still might not break even.
Yeah, because that was basically then what they were charging. They ended up coming around twice after that, and yeah, they charged $100, and they got it. And as far as I know, nobody lost any money on the shows, but that is a lot of money for a club show. So we were naturally very apprehensive, and honestly, I don't think they would have played Station 4, but by the time all of their gear was unloaded, it would have taken up the entire club. I mean, there wouldn't have been, people would have had to have stood in the street and listened from outside. I mean, there wouldn't have been any room in the club for them. So all's well that ends well. I think that was probably all for the best.
Yeah, for your sake, I'm glad that didn't happen because, yeah, I do think that you probably would have hated them after that, and that would suck because, you know, they're still one of your favorite metal bands ever, if not your favorite metal band ever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd say they're my absolute favorite, but they're definitely in my top 10, and definitely they definitely were sort of one of the first, you know, quote unquote power metal bands that I ever started listening to, even though over the years they've sort of refuted that title. They've always just considered themselves a traditional heavy metal band, which is fine. But definitely they were one of the first ones that I started listening to, which opened the doors to everything else that I started listening to after that. So yeah, I definitely always a special place in my favorite list for Man of War, regardless of all the crap that's happened over the years. If you hold a band responsible for your personal, moral, political, religious convictions, you're not going to be listening to anybody. So you have to take the good with the bad, and sometimes you just have to learn to understand that, yeah, sometimes people's personal life, you're not going to agree with everything. And so, yeah, do I support everything that they ever did or ever said? Of course not. But that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy the music for what it is, which is music, not a moral philosophy on how to run your life. So
yeah, I only ever got to see them once, and it was in Atlanta with Rhapsody opening. And if I remember correctly, you came down for that, did you not?
Yeah, we saw that together. Yeah, that was the one and only time that they did like. Well, that's not entirely true, but that was sort of a historical tour because they hadn't really done very much. And that was Rhapsody's first time in the U.S. That was their very first tour. And so, of course, the kiss of death is always to call anything part one. So it was the Demons, Dragons, and Wizards tour part one. And they weren't coming anywhere near Minnesota. I think the closest they got was Ohio.
Yeah, because I was saying you went to Cleveland for that, too, if I remember correctly, too. The Agora or something. They
played Cleveland, which they have a special kind of a special fan base there. They've always had good presence in Cleveland, and then from there they just went along the coast. So I'm like, well, I don't, and I was like, well, yeah, maybe they come back for part two, but I'm like, I don't want to miss this. So I saw the opening in Cleveland. Then 3 or 4 days later, I flew to Atlanta and saw him down there. And then I wound up in New York, uh, in New York for Father's Day because my sister lived out there at the time, and they were playing House of Blues while I was out there. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I bought tickets and I went. And so I saw the close of the tour at House of Blues in New York with about 2,000 people. And that was one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. That was New York Man-O-War fans are pretty damn hard to beat. That was a great show.
Well, that's
Absolutely
their home.
fantastic.
That's their home base too, right? Because aren't they all from like Rochester or that area?
Yeah, I believe so. But just New York in general was a really fun place to see that show. And yeah, I had a very, very good time at that show. I remember it very distinctly, and the venue was great. And well, New York is just a cool city in general to see live things, whether it's Broadway, whether it's music. It's a great town for live events. So yeah, it was a great night all the way around. Definitely money well spent.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up on an hour. I know you had a hard out as to when you needed to get out, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Did you have anything else you wanted or needed to say before I sign us off?
I'm sorry, you cut.
Yeah, we're starting to have some connection issues here, so it's probably good that we're signing off here. So until next time, thanks for being on with me, Nathan. This is Brent.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We'll absolutely do it again. But until next
Love
time,
it.
we're out of here.